Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Looking to scale or launch your supplement or skincare brand? Eagle Labs Incorporated, based in Florida, offers full-service NSF-certified contract manufacturing of capsules, tablets, powders, liquids, gummies, and lotions. All of their manufacturing takes place in the USA. From R&D and formulation to packaging and fulfillment, Eagle Labs provides scalable, high-quality production that meets FDA and NSF standards. To learn more, contact Michael Law, Chief Commercial Officer at Eagle Labs at michael.law@eaglelabsinc.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail. Bruce, my friend, great to see you this morning.
Tracy, how are you? Always good to be on the show with exciting guests.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So before we get rolling, Tracy, why don't you tell us a little bit about today's sponsor?
Absolutely. I'm excited about this. So this episode is sponsored by FunHub, your secret weapon for getting things done. I've seen them help founders nail retail submissions overnight while juggling 10 other things. It's a monitored offshore team of CPG pros, all working from 2 bustling offices, collaborating, supporting, and helping busy founders actually move forward. For more information and to contact FunHub, please go to their website, www.the1funhub.com. That's www.the1funhub.com.
Great. And thank you so much to FunHub. Okay, Tracy, tell us who we've got on today's show so we can roll into this interesting discussion.
Absolutely. We're very excited about this episode today. So we have Adam Brown, live, I believe, from New York, right, Adam? Are you in New York today?
That's right.
Awesome. So Adam is the founder and president of Sircle Media. So welcome to the show, Adam. Great to have you. And so as we jump in here, tell us a little bit about, your background and how you got to this point and just a little bit about yourself.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I like to talk about myself, so I'll do that. Make sure I don't go too long. I currently run Sircle Media. I've been doing it for 13 years, and the original thesis behind it was brands need a full-time social media manager. It's a full-time job, and it's actually a full-time job of many people. It's not one full-time employee. And I think that's where a lot of brands go wrong. Certainly back then, probably even more so now, they underinvest both financially and in opportunity cost efforts. And so they have lackluster results. We focus exclusively on CPG and beverage brands and mainly brick and mortar sold brands. So we're not a performance marketing agency. We don't work with D2C only brands. The lion's share of our brands are 90% plus sold in retail stores. They're omni-channel in approach, most slightly over 10 million in revenue. And so we're really helping these earlier stage brands scale and grow via social media strategy and execution, content creation and execution, influencer management and execution. And we do a little bit of email, branded storytelling email, not performance-based email marketing for the brands that we work with.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Adam, thanks. So, with our audience of primarily, founders and leaders of small, emerging, or challenger brands, what gap did you see? Because, gosh, 13 years ago, I'm not even sure people called social media social media. So, what did you guys see that early that you said, hey, you know what? There might be a business here and we can help a lot of these smaller brands that aren't Tide or, Budweiser and have to be more cautious and thoughtful on their spending. What did you see there?
Totally. You're right. 13 years ago, if a brand was on social media, it was their niece, the receptionist. It was really appreciated, undervalued, and they didn't really spend the appropriate amount of time on it. I'm 48 years old now, so at that time I was like in my early 30s, and I had a light bulb moment. I was late to social media. I looked at Facebook and I said immediately, no one's going to be able to figure this out internally. It's too fast moving. And if you're running a business, it would be impossible to keep up with the speed of change. So it sounds cliche, but I had that light bulb moment as a late adopter to social media. I saw it. I'm like, this has to be an outsourced thing. And I just have been around marketing my whole life. And so I've seen that most agencies really struggle with social because it's very hard to cap the work on social media because it's an ongoing, evergreen, constantly moving, uncapped type of medium. Most other mediums, branding, direct response, PR, are controlled marketing mediums. I'm going to get you to think something and buy. I'm going to tell you this celebrity uses this product and want you to buy it. In social, I'm going to put stuff out there and I want good response, bad response. I want to have a dialogue, and that uncapped model really doesn't work for agencies. So I just saw this white space. Brands need to outsource it. Agencies are going to suck at it or just not want to do it. And so we created Sircle Media. I literally started selling brands one by one myself for the first about year and just servicing that need. And it's only that thesis has only been proven out over the last 13 years.
So, Adam, a little bit more background here before we push deeper into our discussion. So, two questions. First off, help folks understand, how do you and your team, define social media? There's, again, I'm kind of a escapee from the Amish community. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, and then we've had other guests that talk about the difference between social media and social commerce. So how do you describe those if you go into a conference room or get on a call with a $12 million brand and they go, I think we want to work with you, but we have no idea what the hell's going on out there. Can you give us a baseline understanding, Adam?
Yeah, so I'll work backwards on that sort of group of questions. If we meet
Sure.
with a brand, I think they are just thinking we need somebody to help us strategically navigate social networks as they stand today. So
Hmm.
whatever those social networks are, and those ebb and flow over time. There's leaders and losers and winners and disappearers, and there's just this constant flow of need to manage messaging on platforms of the day. So again, another reason that that's something they have to outsource. I'd say most brands that we work with, that's your Facebook, your Instagram, so Meta and TikTok, and then there's some other sort of secondary platforms out there. So understanding like how do we leverage them? What are the right tools? How should we be going about it? It's very insular at brands. They are almost always behind. Like by the time they're headline reading, social has changed drastically. So they really need outsourced talent to help them. So I think that's what they think when they think that. But I'd say for the first time ever, there's been a move away from it being called social networks or social media because it's really not social anymore. It's really interest media. When you go on social media now, the algorithms show you interest and intent content, not social. So even if you came from the Amish country and you logged onto Facebook for the first time, you're not seeing your friends from high school, although you wouldn't in that example, but you wouldn't be seeing your friends from high school and learning about those milestones anymore. You'd be seeing, I just moved to a new apartment. As you can see, I have no art on my wall. You'd be seeing art content, furniture content, because I just moved and I'm getting what's interesting to me now and not social. So it's actually an interesting question to ask today on this date because it's no longer really social media. It's really about interest and intent.
Hmm.
That's interesting. So, Adam, we're about to dive deeper into what your firm does. So, the opening point here would be tell us the services in a little more color that Circle offers to brands, because I think that will make the rest of our discussion flow if they understand exactly what you and your team can do.
Totally. Okay. So primarily it's outsourced social media management. So instead of hiring Jane Doe, you hire Circle Media, and we serve as that employee at the price point, energy, firepower of that employee, but with the experience and the sort of technical skill that an agency would bring. We have 83 employees at Circle. So you're able to get one point person, but prowess and team around them. So it's like having an internist and then having the best medical team around them to execute on social with the best and current tools. Something you really can't do with one person if you just think about it logically. And so brands outsource to us, that's about 80% of our business, to run their social media day to day. So their calendar, their strategy, their copy, their content creation, their distribution, their influencers, their paid social, their brand collaborations, and everything in between to help them push out messaging, respond to messaging, and have a conversation with the community around their products and services. We only work in B2C. So, and we only in B2C work in CPG, beverage, and spirits. So we're very specific in what we do, and we're very specific in who we do it for, so that when we join a brand, we really understand more than anything their channel strategy. You really need a partner that understands retail velocity support. Getting product on the shelves is their salesperson's job, but getting product off the shelves is the responsibility of the whole marketing team. But for most early stage brands, it's their social media team because of a function of budget, a function of size, a function of scale. They're not doing OTT ads. They're not running a commercial. They're not doing bigger production things. So they really need to be technical, and we do that for them in an outsourced capacity. We do some other things, but I'll pause if you have any follow-up questions about that.
No, I think what's interesting. Sorry, Trace.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting there, Adam. You just said some of the magic words that are music to my ears as a commercial guy in my guts. You got to sell stuff. There's lots of whether it's marketing people or very senior executives in bigger companies or agencies, they want to do elegant, beautiful things that win prizes. I'm a capitalist. We need to hit velocity hurdles or we get discontinued, right? So when you're talking about brick and mortar and understanding that and understanding, the real nuts and bolts of velocity hurdles, I'm not sure we've had another agency person that has said those words. So I salute you on that because that shows you and your team get it. I mean, that's the whole reason you guys can even get paid by clients. They're obviously hitting velocity hurdles and you guys are helping them do that. Tracy, I'm sorry I stepped on you there.
No, that's okay. So what I hear you say though, which I love, Adam, is you're really one-stop shopping for a brand for anything, all things social media. Would that be a fair
Yeah,
statement?
yeah, that's right. I would say yes, period. Absolutely correct. I do think that a lot of brands, especially pre-pandemic, we're looking for a one-stop shop for everything, inclusive of social media, but everything else also. So this like agency of record AOR that just handled everything. Because for a small growing team, it was just easier to have one point of contact instead of many. And I think that was a big miss. Social media is just a different carve out. It's very intimate. It's very hand-to-hand combat. You should hire Jane Doe to run it. But because Jane Doe doesn't exist, that's why Circle Media exists to fill that void and then help your other agencies, your Amazon agency, your performance agency, your PR firm do what they do.
Mhm.
All of those partners do better if you have sound social media management. And sound social media management does better if you have great agency partners specializing in those areas. This catch-all approach was a really big miss, and a lot of brands got burned. And Bruce, going back to like what you were saying, all of them would have ideas. They would talk about follower growth. They would talk about sexy pieces of content. They would do all of these things and not talk about brass tacks, which is we're CPG and beverage brands. We got to get products off the shelves at Publix, off the shelves at Costco. Like we got to get people trying the product, coming back for the product and trying it again. And they were just talking about these big ethereal sort of nice things that seem fun instead of getting into the real business. And I think in 2015 to 2020, I was, screaming that message, but brands were working with their agencies and they're like, we hear you, Adam, but we really like this big partner. But in a post iOS world where Apple made their changes, made it harder to track people and harder to target people with ads. Then we had a global pandemic where everyone was at home and they were ordering online. But when it ended, everyone went back to stores or they buy on GoPuff or they buy on Instacart or they're buying different ways. Behavior has changed. So you really need somebody that's saying, like, we're not going to be selling products to people off our website as much as we used to. Just behavior has changed. So we really need somebody who understands how to get people aware, considering, and trying at retail stores. And so it's really been a explosion for our company. We had 19 employees going into the pandemic on March 13th, 2020. We now have 83 because we've been the guys always talking about retail velocity support for CPG and beverage brands. And Bruce, our favorite people at most of our clients, the people at our clients that love us the most is more often the sales team than the marketing team. Because the sales team is like, I got the order, I just got to get the reorder, and I need a team supporting that. So it's I'm glad you guys are picking up on that.
Oh yeah,
Well,
we're
go
big
ahead,
fans.
Tracy, tell him.
It's all about sell through, not sell in. How many brands we've met, Adam, that are dancing in the parking lot at Walmart because they just got a yes from the buyer. What they forget to understand is that's when the hard work starts, right? Because getting on the shelf is the easy part. Getting it off and getting into consumers' carts is the challenge, and that's where you guys come in. So one other question that dawned on me. So when you're working with a client, are you working with the marketing team or the sales team or both? Who's your direct contact at a brand?
We're always dealing with the marketing team, but as a salesman myself, I'll always be like, listen, everything we just said to you, we need to be documenting and getting into your sales deck. A lot of this social content that we're be making should go into your sales deck. Because ultimately, the buyer wants to know, do you have a great product? Do I think people will buy it? Is it priced right? All those types of things. But then they want to know, how are you going to underwrite the shelf space in my store?
Hmm.
So you need to have some commentary around, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to activate local influencers in Tampa, Florida. We're going to have them coming in and trying your product. And, like they want to hear that story. So sometimes we'll be invited to come on and maybe speak to the sales reps or speak to the brokers and have a conversation. But I'd say 99% of the time, we're dealing with either the marketing team or founder, and then they are bringing those messages to the sales team. And there's a loop there, but it's 1 degree of separation from us.
Well, and the other thing that's interesting about what you're saying, Adam, with brands, I don't know if sweet spot might be the wrong phrase, but you said these brands that are clients when they start working with you might be in this $10 million ballpark revenue range. A lot of these companies and brands might be doing regional expansion, right? Start at your home base, project out from where people may have some awareness. And what a lot of people don't understand is that each of these retailers, especially the brick and mortar, differ by class of trade and they have different strategies. So the fact that you're thinking in terms of velocity, hurdle rates, sales metrics is incredibly helpful because just saying you have all these impressions might not matter, but if you're doing working with a brand down in Florida and they really have to crush it at Publix, you probably have a different approach for Publix than if you're in Texas and what are you going to do for HEB if that's a must-win account. So again, I appreciate and this is a very positive way I'm using this word. I appreciate that incredibly tactical view of winning the battle in the hand-to-hand combat versus picking up some prize because you had a elegant influencer piece of creative shot at sunrise in Hawaii. Who cares? Did you sell anything?
Exactly.
Totally.
Yep. So Adam, talk to us about when should a brand hire a social media agency? What's the best time? When?
Well, there's a lot of ways to answer this, but I'll go from a function of like size and growth and inertia of the brand.
Hmm.
So I get on the phone a lot with brands that are, sub $3 million run rate, and I'm like, listen to me, as like your brother, don't hire any agency because any agency you're going to hire at like at $2 million run rate, you're going to just look at a function of price. You're going to be like, well, these guys charge 2,000 versus these other guys that charge 10,000, so I'll just go with the 2,000. If you just think about it, you're giving them $500 a week. You're hoping that they're going to run your social, your content, your influencers. You start making a list, and just logically as a human, you're like, how much could I get for $100 each business day from this partner? And how many clients does this partner have to have a real business? So they
Right.
must have a ton of clients, and I must be getting as little time as possible so that so each person can have 14 clients. So like, just you can't get in bed with a partner like that. And I know it's frustrating because it's, well, what else can I do? That's what I can afford. It's one of those things where you really have to put your head down and just be scrappy. And it can be the founder. So a lot of in CPG and beverage, there's a lot of like young digital native founders, so they can lean into that. But some don't feel comfortable. Some don't want to be in front of camera, or some are not. Some are my age, and they decided to launch a brand, and like the last thing they're going to do is social media. So then you got to just be scrappy. You got to find, this is where you can go: niece, nephew, daughter, friend of a friend, neighbor. Like, use your sphere of influence for young digital natives.
Hmm.
Listen to free content from thought leaders like myself. I post on LinkedIn every day for the last 6 years, and I just give away free content. Just save it. Take that saved content and recommendation from me or someone else. Give it to a 18 to 22-year-old that'll work for credit or for $15 an hour, and just keep it very narrow and small and specific. Like, here's what we are. Here's why it matters. Here's where you can find us. And Bruce, this is where it's really helpful to be small and be regional. If you're just in Texas, find yourself somebody that goes to UT Austin, who lives in Texas, who's maybe in a fraternity or sorority that also has other chapters in Texas, and do a plan or a program where you pay these college kids to go to HEB, take your product, turn it around, make sure it's facing out at retail, maybe buy a few, take it home. And like, you just got to go small ball and go really, really scrappy, I think, until at least $3 million run rate. Once you get to 3 to 10 and you have a little bit of momentum, that also might be where you start thinking about raising capital, because you're like, we have a real business here. Maybe we can do a late seed or an early Series A round of funding. And then if you get that money, like as an investor myself, I want to know, how are you going to use that money? And usually you'll see a big pie chart, and it's like, we're going to use 30% of this money for marketing. Okay, well, now show me how you're going to do it. And more importantly, who's going to run it? And so at that point, it can't be an intern or your neighbor's daughter. Now it's got to be, who's the partner, and that's when I think you want to bring on an agency who strategically can execute. And whether you hire Circle or not, I do think it's very important to get somebody with deep experience in your category.
Mm.
So I would be aware of a social media agency that's like, we're vertical agnostic, we do everything. You're going to have to teach them too much, which you don't have time to do. So at that point, you got to find somebody with deep current category experience.
So if you're a beverage, don't hire an agency that does a bunch of beauty brands because they're not going to understand.
Totally. And I almost invested in a beverage brand a few years ago, and I spoke to the founder, and I'm like, so when are you going to be profitable? And he's like, if you're asking me that question, you don't understand beverage investing. I will probably never be profitable, even when I sell, right? Because it's a low price point, low margin, high volume item. So yeah, that's a very unique thing. How do you push beverage products that are hard to ship, expensive to ship? So it
Yes.
really is a retail play. And you go to Publix right now, there's a million beverage options. So
Yep.
how do you differentiate, right? So yeah, you want somebody that has real hand-to-hand combat experience in beverage.
Yep. Absolutely. Bruce, you're pondering there, I can see.
Well, I was going to wait till after your question on influencers, but my public service announcement would be, as a cheap Scottish Catholic guy, I'm not sure I would invest in anyone who tells me he'll probably never be profitable. Those words would scare me.
Yeah, well, I didn't. But when I've asked around, everyone laughs, and they're like, over a whiskey, they're like, that's the beverage business, like, and so it's just a hard business.
Oh yeah, well you said, some of the magic words. It's when people talk about a DTC only business, it's like one of the first things we'll ask is, do you have a good price to weight ratio? And some people will say, what's that? It's like, well, are you reasonably expensive and are you light? And can you be shipped without high risk of damage? If you're shipping crystal wine glasses, okay, unless they're super expensive and they're packed by, the Keebler elves in feathers, I don't know how you're going to do that. Tracy, ask about these influencers.
Yes,
This
I
is
was going
going
to
to be a
ask you a
juicy one.
follow-up question there is, so how does a brand should think about an influencer or an ambassador for their brand? So Tell us a little bit about how you help with that and maybe tell our audience what's the difference between a brand ambassador and an influencer.
Yeah, I think ambassadors are just powered super fans, so they can be real. Like if you get some early fans, especially if you start the traditional way, like I'm from Boston and I started going to farmers markets or whatever, and I got into some Boston retailers and I started expanding. It's a great town with a lot of colleges and a lot of young people and a lot of like word of mouth ambassadors. And if you start to get some people that really love your product and want to talk about your product, there's many different ways to lock them down as ambassadors. You send them free product every month, they talk about you, and now you got a face of the brand. So those should be people that like really represent your brand. If you're targeting, New York City male, metrosexual people that are into health and wellness, and I'd be a good target. Most people are targeting different people, and so you got to find those ambassadors that represent it so that if I'm like pushing Yeti, beverages, it should feel right. And I'm definitely not a Yeti target, to be honest with you. Right. But it should feel like it's a pairing and it makes sense. And that can be a great ambassador for what you're trying to do. With influencers, you're really just trying to find people that wield real influence. And so I think it's really important that you don't just like overpay or reach and just do random things. If you're going to partner with somebody, you got to just do a little bit of homework. There are SaaS platforms out there to use to find people that you pay for. They can be very expensive. We use a very expensive sort of Ferrari version here. But for most brands can't afford that. You just have to be logical and strategic in just like looking at their social accounts and thinking about, do they have a lot of followers? But more importantly, do they have followers and do they have a ratio of just a lot of people engaging on their posts? And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Just look at the posts. Are people engaging? Are they saying things like using words? Is there depth to it? A lot of times you'll take a lot of female influencers that say, you should look at my engagement. And then you go and they're just saying, you're so pretty. We love your hair from other girls. Like, where'd you find like and nothing about anything that they're talking about, just like innocuous stuff. So it's engagement, depth of engagement, what is being said. And then I think the most important thing, are they responding? So
Right.
if somebody says, "Hey, Adam, I was thinking about a Yeti, but I think they're so expensive," and I respond and say, "I know you think they're expensive, but I have nine other bottles in my kitchen and they've all gone to crap. So this is a much better bottle option because this is so durable," whatever it is, that's real influence. And they're packing a punch because they're helping you with like sales related questions and trying to get people to convert. And you should look for partners that do that. And it just takes a little bit of work, spending time on their Instagram or TikTok posts, more so Instagram, and just looking at the behavior and the conversation. And so we look for conversational influencers, not just one and done, billboards. Now, if there's brands that are big enough, that have a big enough budget, I think you can have a portfolio of some just billboards, some ambassadors, and some influence. But if you're talking about earlier stage brands that need to punch above their weight, you got to get the 360 influence person and don't overpay for their follower count. You really care more about the engagement. I'd rather somebody with 2,000 followers that has a long conversation about a topic than somebody with hundreds of thousands that really never responds to their audience.
Yeah, a lot of brands I would think just only care about, oh, well, they have 10,000 followers, and so I'm going with this person because they have a lot of followers. So that's great advice for a small emerging brand for
Yeah,
sure.
and most of them are bots located in the Philippines. So, Adam, one other question here. So, I've been in charge of a lot of brands, and Tracy and I, over the course of our career, have helped a lot more brands. One of the things that just makes me nervous is, how do you manage an influencer? Let's say you've done all the right things and you've screened them and it's a good match and they have high engagement and they love Yeti glasses, since that's what we're talking about right now. How do you handle it if someone who's been a good influencer suddenly does something nutty and you're like, oh no? I mean, do you just cut it off right there, or do you give them a warning? I mean, some of the crazy stuff you see, I'm like, oh my God, if they did that and they're wearing my brand t-shirt, I'd lose my mind.
Obviously, larger scale, especially like full-blown ambassador signed to a 6-month partnership that's becoming the face of your brand, is higher stakes than just a one and done. But either way, you don't want anybody doing anything wrong. That's why I think a lot of the due diligence is important. And I think you can do due diligence and still mess up. Especially in the, I guess this has just always been true. But right now, a lot of polarizing topics, a lot of political topics. And so you might think everything's fine and did all the due diligence. And then they start talking about a political candidate that you didn't like, or they take a stance on something you don't agree with. So you have to be mindful. You have to think about partners that are in it for the long haul. You can look at their depth, how long they've been around, look at all their posts and see like, this person seems like they keep it pretty safe. They don't talk about politics. They don't talk about, global economics like this. They just talk about better for you choices for their kids. And so you have to make an informed decision. But in our contracts, like we're very clear, we represent our clients, we represent all the contract negotiations and all the terms. We're very clear on our expectations. And obviously, if they do something inappropriate, we want to have the ability to sever the relationship and make sure that we're not working with somebody in a capacity that might be damaging to the brand.
So that's a great answer, and it leads right into this next piece. So your comment around due diligence, protecting your clients, and having some sort of recourse to exit a relationship if it starts to go sideways. It's like, hey, Bruce, you're representing a New York brand. You got to stop wearing Boston Celtics t-shirts in your posts.
Totally.
It's not helping. So you touched on this a bit, Adam, but I want to give you a chance to go a little bit deeper. So what's the benefit of brands working with a specialist agency such as Sircle rather than, XYZ, Gargantuan, Omnicom, Leo Burnett, whoever's left of the legacy gigantic agencies?
I think if you look at the bigger agencies, you could almost see on their suite of services like the most recent addition, and a lot of times it's social media, and not just because it's alphabetical, right? So you'll see like huge PR firms that like they do all these things, and then it's like social media management, and they did it because if they didn't do it, they're going to go out of business because everyone wants more social than PR. And same with the big agencies, the big traditional media buying agency that might be excellent at that is going to struggle in social, and a lot of times you're getting the same account rep, so that account rep went to work at Publicis or Omnicom or one of these big companies for not really to be a social media manager. Social media manager is like the last thing that they're doing. So it's like the least focus of the agency. If you just think about that logically, is probably not going to be good. And so you want somebody, you can almost paint the picture. If I told you to sketch what a social media manager would look like, they'd probably be young, they'd probably be a digital native, they'd probably be a pretty good writer, they'd probably be a good content creator. They'd have all these attributes that you don't usually find with your account representative at one of these big companies. So right out of the gate, it's like this doesn't seem like the match. Just like when people hire our agency, they're not hiring me. I'm the last person they want to have on their social media, right? We're staffing them with like the prototypical ninja for the category and for the expertise. So going back to category, I think that CPG experience goes a long way. So it's not like I'm like, wait, what is retail velocity? What is HEB? I've never heard of HEB. Erewhon? How do you spell that? Like, no, no, no. You need to have somebody who understands the retailers I just mentioned are very different. The
Yeah.
market is different. The target demo is different. The conversation is different. And the reality is, you can't afford when you're an early stage brand to have a serendipity and hope a lot of it gets figured out. Meaning, when you're putting like the wheels to the road, when you're spending, like if I'm spending it on an influencer or if I'm spending on meta ads, I need you to not like spend 7 months experimenting. I need it to be pretty tight. So I
Right.
need somebody who like really kind of knows what they're doing. And so that industry expertise helps if it's like, hey, we have 9 other brands that are doing like a 500 target test. And so here's how we're thinking about that messaging and the geography around it and the right types of influencers. So we can start on third base, just giving the reps that we've had instead of like, here's a theory and let's see how it plays out, which means the dollars go further and you have less R&D time, which I think is mission critical. So you can like get right to the business instead of like, we think this might work. Here's what we did for a jewelry brand where there's really non-transferable information between the
Right.
two. So I think that's really important. And listen, we were vertical agnostic until 2017 because as long as it's a B2C product and it's a product, not a service, we really could help most brands. But I think the added on top of that energy is this understanding and expertise in and around your category, which goes a long way. So it's very hard to find that full cocktail, right? So
So
even if there's, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Adam, but one of the interesting things that you're saying here that we're hearing is it really is kind of the age of the specialist, because I've sat in too many meetings with too many clients where they're being given counsel of we're going to test and learn with all this creative. Well, that sounds great and it's still applicable, but I don't think the runway is as long as some agencies may think, because you'll run out of time or money while they're
That's right.
testing 14 different pieces of creative. It's like, dude, we need to sell stuff. You can go have your little experiment over here and, write it up in some journal only eggheads read. We need to sell stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, look, age of the specialist is here. A lot of my friends that own Amazon agencies that were doing Amazon and retail media and even performance marketing, they've all, not all, but 95% have cut back to like, we're just going to be Amazon assassins. We're just going to be retail media assassins. Like, we're going to, like, it's very important to understand your lane because things are changing so fast. I think you need somebody who 1000% of the time is geeking out about their category and their expertise because you're just going to get the best in class. Like if I need open heart surgery, I want a ninja cardiologist on my team. I don't just want an internist who's like, I studied the heart and I think I can do it. I want the best in class. And so I think these
Exactly.
specialists go a long way.
Yeah.
Adam, we have a podiatrist who's available today. Would that be okay for your heart surgery? Yeah.
Definitely a
The other
pass.
thing before we keep moving, we've had another guest from a non-competing service called Retail and Response, and they say the same thing. They focus on one or two traditional media channels. That's it.
Yeah.
And they've been able to help a lot of brands. So it's just like you're saying, we have category experts. We know this. This is what we do. We're not going to put up billboards on I-95 coming across the George Washington Bridge.
That's
Tracy?
right.
Yeah. No, I love the fact, Adam, that you're not trying to be all things to all people. I love your best quote, stay in your lane, do it, and be an expert in your category and what you do. So maybe tell our audience a little bit about maybe some of the mistakes you've seen some brands make regarding social media and using social media to drive, brand awareness and trial and velocity. So tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, I have so many. I do think a very, very common one is as they scale, founder lets go of the reins, and one of the roles that they hire for is like a head of creative, like a creative director, a head of somebody that's going to usher the brand forward visually. And so then we get hired, and we just spend all this time on the art, the Instagram post, the 97 edits. They're curating their feed. They're spending all this time, and none of it is focused on moving awareness and moving product. It's just art. And we know it. As soon as I see the title, creative director, I'm like, oh God, this might be the most likely tough. And there's plenty of great ones. So any of my clients that hear this, great creative directors grow great. But they spend all this time, and then a lot of times I'll be pitching a brand, and they'll go, "Well, what do you think? Look at our Instagram. What do you think?" And that's always a slippery slope. But I'll say the biggest thing I think is that I'm looking at your Instagram, and I don't see at all who you are, why you exist, or most importantly, where to buy your product.
Yeah.
And I say, don't go so smart, you go stupid. I always say this to brands, and they might love their feed, and it looks really cool, especially right now. Everyone does user generated content, UGC. So it's like very real and grimy. I'm like, yeah, but where are you sold? You don't have one post that talks about any retailer or D2C or Amazon because your head of art is out here doing art, and we missed math and science class. And I think it's like, wow. So they're focused on aesthetic for aesthetic purposes. That doesn't make any sense. Focus on aesthetic for brand and storytelling is important because you need people seeing your logo, being aware of it, considering and trying it. And I think they get too caught up in art. And just for the sake of time, I could riff 97 different answers to this question, but I think that's a very common one. Too much time on art, not enough time on substance.
Yeah. Great advice. Love that.
And I was on an old school commercial shoot years ago, and the director said to my manager, and I thought his head would explode. The last scene was supposed to have the package shot on the counter in a kitchen. And the director says, that package is ruining my commercial. And I was like, dude, that package is paying for your
It's
commercial.
paying for the commercial.
And our
Totally.
goal is to actually sell stuff that's put in that package. So But that was the last time he was hired by our firm. So, Adam, who has had the greatest influence on your career? And if you want to name names, great. If not, that's fine too. But what did this person do for you that's really stuck with you over time?
I've been asked this question before, and I always go back to just my dad. I worked with my dad for a long time. He's now in his 80s. He was working as an eye doctor through the pandemic, seeing patients with like masks on and just like hustling into his late 70s. And just like self-starter, hardest worker I know, has been endlessly curious, has learned different businesses throughout his career, always with a good attitude, always with a smile, even in the hardest days. So he's definitely been like the biggest inspiration for me professionally of like good, bad, sideways, and different global economics, weird things, terrible things are going to happen. But this commitment to like being endlessly curious, always working, always going 110% for sure came from him. And I think that's been the best guiding light for me professionally.
Love that.
Excellent. We get that. We get the answer of a mother, father, or both parents a lot, and I think that's critical. Even if we weren't thinking we were learning anything, we actually were. You know,
Totally.
how did your parents interact with like the waitress or the high school kid cutting your lawn? You know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, Trace.
So as we're rounding third and heading home, Adam, our humanitarian question today. So tell our audience your favorite sports team, band, and brand, and why you follow them.
Yeah, so I thought about the sports team, and I follow all the worst sports teams in America. I'm from New York, so I follow the Jets, the Mets, the Knicks, the Islanders, and outside of the Islanders, when I was a kid, like all my teams don't win. So I'll give you my favorite answer is Michigan football. They have won at least. They just won a national title recently. I went to Michigan, so that's a no-brainer. And it's the only college I applied to, and my daughter is about to hopefully apply there as well. She's a senior in high school. So Michigan football is my team. Nike's always, and am I meant to answer all three or just one?
You can. You're
Okay.
Yeah,
rolling,
go
baby.
for it.
Go.
Okay. I'd say Nike is the brand that I think about for my whole life as being the best and most culturally relevant marketer that I know about my whole life, and so I'm really appreciative of them. And randomly, Pearl Jam is a band that I've always really loved. I always find myself coming back to, and I've never seen them live. And I just saw them live at Madison Square Garden this past year, and so that was a big bucket list moment for me. And I don't know if you get Pearl Jam a lot on here, but that's a band that I really appreciate. I finally saw them live this year.
How were they?
They were great. I
They
mean,
haven't
they
lost
weren't
their fastball.
they weren't raging probably like they used to. I think Eddie Vedder was sitting most of the time, but he was great, and it was just a cool experience.
Now, Adam, as much as I've enjoyed this discussion, you've said a couple of things that really hurt me. As a Notre Dame guy, I have to let the Michigan comment stay in the discussion here. Okay, I'll be back in therapy for that. But as a New Yorker, I love the Knicks. They're finally trending. Like they're not ridiculous anymore. Do you think you could use your magic powers of social influence to get Cat to play some defense?
Oh man, I just watching that playoff run, I'm like, we can't if he doesn't suddenly have like a lobotomy and get tough and play defense, we're not going to win it. And you saw what happened.
It's like, dude, you're 7 feet tall. Can you block a shot, please? Anyway, I do love the Knicks. Adam, so thank you so much for your time. Why don't you tell the folks out there how they can get in touch with you or your firm to learn more about your services and perhaps have you help them and help them grow and save them from themselves in some instances?
Absolutely. So on all social platforms, it's at Circle Media. That's SIRCLE. So it's Social Circle Media. That's where the name comes from. So at Circle Media, I run all of our social media personally. So if you reach out on any platforms, you'll get me. But I'm very deep on LinkedIn. It's been by far my number one source of business for the last 5, 6 years. It's a red avatar with a cartoon face of mine. It's Adam J. Brown. Reach out to me on there. Engage with my content, and I take requests. If you ever want to ask a question or know something about it, ask me and I will respond to it right away. That's the best place to get value.
And I love
All
that.
right.
That's how I
All
found
right.
That's how I found you,
I,
Adam, was on LinkedIn. So I
I
saw what
know.
and I thought, man, this dude's got it going on. So
You must be on deep on LinkedIn if you responded to Tracy's inbound cold, but good for you. All right, Tracy.
I tried to ignore it, but he finally got through.
yeah,
Gosh,
I was persistent.
he is persistent.
Yes.
Okay, Tracy, the big finish.
Absolutely. Well, Adam, this has been awesome. Just great episode. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think our audience is going to love this. And audience, thanks for joining us today. And please continue to follow us on our LinkedIn page as well as Spotify and Apple. And we post every Tuesday. So thanks again for joining us. And thank you again, Adam Brown.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck out there, folks.